you had to capsulize it, that's the whole plan. It's shrinking the, this economy has been juiced by this federal credit card, where we just keep spending at the federal level, and we either print or borrow, depends, to finance that spending. And when we borrow, we see rates go up. When we print, we see inflation go up. But that's been the path for decades, really, and that path was exacerbated under Biden. Now, the answer is cut up the credit card, grow the private sector, and then you create a big lag when you do that. It's very quick. He's very quick to cut the public sector because all you do is send out notices, you lay off, X amount of people, and what does that do to the economy? Well, a large portion of the working public are dependent, either directly or indirectly, on public sector spending.
Yeah.
So when you cut that, you're cutting economic activity very quickly. And he thinks that the private sector is going to replace that.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Markets and Madness, a place where we discuss the madness that occurs when politics, economics, and personalities all move in different directions. For those of you who are joining us, I've just got to say we've seen a lot of new viewers over the last couple of weeks. I would ask you, please subscribe. We've gotten a lot of likes. We've gotten a lot of comments. Keep it up. I try to respond back to everybody I can. So just help us grow this channel. A lot more likes, a lot more subscribers. It'll help go a long way. So thanks very much. Tim, how are you this afternoon?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. All good. A lot of
Good.
things to catch up on. We've had the semi-State of the Union speech there, the joint session speech. We had
That
a
was
lot of
pretty
things,
good.
a lot of volatility in the equity markets. Peace is.
I half expected him to take a copy and say to Nancy Pelosi, who was very elegantly sucking her teeth every time the camera was on her. Nancy, you want to tear this one up? I got a spare copy if you. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just really rude, deplorable, actually.
Yeah. I mean, not standing up for the kids with cancer, not standing
Yeah,
up for the mothers that lost their children.
right.
You
And
know,
Al Green, as much as I like his music, I, I thought he was kind of out of line. I think if he did a song, that would have been a little better.
I'm waving the cane. I thought
Yeah,
that was going to
that's
get
right.
serious. I thought that
I've been thinking a lot about style versus substance. You can't help but compare Trump to Reagan because there's so many similarities about what's happening. But Reagan was a guy that they thought was an empty suit. They thought he was all style and no substance. Turned out he was very substantive. Whereas Trump is a very substantive guy, and he's got his own style, I got to admit, but it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. It's a different kind of style
that's right.
than Reagan had. Reagan was very disarming. There he goes again. I mean,
That's
you
right.
had to like the way Reagan put
I
somebody
mean,
down.
Trump did have the one good comment to RFK when talking about all the people over 100 years old, 130 years old.
Yeah,
And he says to RFK, "Well, Bobby, I guess the country's a lot healthier than we thought." That was
yeah.
a good line.
How about calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas?
That's
Right.
right.
I
Well,
thought that was
and
quite a good
he
move
said,
too.
"No, Pocahontas here wants it to go on." Yeah, he's very
That was good.
disarming in his own way.
Yeah, yeah, he was. I thought he was pretty good. Um, I he can be. He's got an image of being a bully, and he is that in a lot of ways. And I think it detracts from his effectiveness. You know, the people that love him are going to love him. Like you said years ago, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. The people who love me still love me. And that's probably true. But if you really
And he
divide
did say that to the Democrats. No matter what I say tonight, you're not going to applaud.
exactly,
That's right.
you got 20 to 30% of the country that won't listen to. They're completely uh, uh, avoiding whatever he has to say. They don't want to know it. and you got 20 to 30% of the company that whatever he says is fine with me. And then you got, that 60 to 80% in the middle. And that's, he ought to be talking to those people. And sometimes he does. Um, I'll tell you one thing about his style. It's more conversational than we're used to seeing. He doesn't really talk at the group, he talks to the group.
Hmm.
And that is effective. And I think that's what's getting him someplace. But
Yeah.
all in all, it was a very interesting speech.
Yeah, he laid out a lot of things. He didn't talk about the crypto reserves. At least I don't
Well, he
remember.
talked 2 hours. I mean,
Yeah,
an hour and 40 minutes. I don't know how much more he really could have talked about. He was starting to lose the crowd at the end anyway.
yeah. There was a couple of things I wanted him to expand on, but he didn't, and as is right, going 2 hours long. But I would have liked to hear more about the idea of the sovereign wealth fund, more about the idea of crypto reserves. What's that mean? How is it going to affect the markets? What's it going to do? But all in all, he did put a lot out there, and there's a lot going on. The whole idea of Doge and what Doge is doing.
Yeah, somebody, I gave a little talk to my group this afternoon, this morning actually. And they said, "What do you think here of the markets?" And I said, "The markets are all about trying to figure out where we're going to go. But it's hard to do that when you don't know where you are." And we're at a point now where there are so many cross currents. Like, take the numbers we saw, the flash GDP number we saw, the GDP now number, the trade figures. All of these are people front running these tariffs. And there's so many oddities and distortions right now that if you draw any conclusions to economic activity now, you're really not getting any place. There's always a J curve. There's always a lag as to when he pushes the button, and then we start to see the economy respond to it. And you don't know whether it's going to be 2 weeks or 6 months or when that's going to be. But he's moved at such a fast level that we see reactions in advance of where we normally thought we would.
On that point, I just read something before we came on. It was and something that we've been talking about for since we've been doing this. Besant speaking in front of the New York Economic Club, saying, when I first met Trump, he said to me, "How do we get this debt and this deficit down?" And Besant's quote was, he said, "I was thinking about that for 18
Get
months."
closer to the mic. I'm having
He
trouble
says,
hearing you.
"I was thinking about this for 18 months. And what I told him is we have to move employment from the public sector to the private sector, which is really what we've been talking about for a while. And that seems to be the plan,
Absolutely.
fully and
Yeah.
completely."
If you had to capsulize it, that's the whole plan.
Yeah.
It's shrinking this economy has been juiced by this federal credit card, where we just keep spending at the federal level, and we either print or borrow, depends, to finance that spending. And when we borrow, we see rates go up. When we print, we see inflation go up. But that's been the path for decades, really, and that path was exacerbated under Biden. Now, the answer is cut up the credit card, grow the private sector, and then you create a big lag when you do that. It's very quick. He's very quick to cut the public sector because all you do is send out notices, you lay off, X amount of people, and what does that do to the economy? Well, a large portion of the working public are dependent, either directly or indirectly, on public sector spending.
Yeah.
So when you cut that, you're cutting economic activity very quickly. And he thinks that the private sector is going to replace that. And it probably will, but over time, it's much more organic growth. We've lived with inorganic growth, and that's what we've come to rely on. And now he's saying, no, that's not going to last. And indeed, the CBO and everybody else has been using the word unsustainable, and it is unsustainable. When you start to see debt on interest on the debt approaching or exceeding $1 trillion a year. That is clearly unsustainable.
Right. We've been saying that for, geez, but at least the last 20 years. We've
Yeah,
been saying that this is unsustainable, right?
yeah,
And now we have somebody who really is not worried about a second term. He's not worried about what people think of him. They've they've taken shots at him literally and figuratively, and he's saying, "I don't care. I'm going to fix the problem the way I think you need to fix the problem," and
yeah.
that's where we're at. Yeah, he's
You know,
making
it really does remind me so much of the Reagan years. I mean, I don't know if you were probably trading at that point,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I can remember when Volcker said, I'm going to let interest rates, I'm not going to target Fed funds rates anymore. I'm going to let them go wherever they have to go. I'm going to target the aggregate amount of money supply, and I'm going to not let that grow. I'm either going to shrink it or let it grow at a sharply lower rate. And we didn't know what the hell it meant. We all looked at each other. And then it dawned on me at one point. I can remember where I was when the light went off. And I said, you know what he's saying? If he's saying this, these rates could go to 20, 22%. And they did. They went
My,
right
my
there.
first mortgage was 18%. I
Yeah,
remember it well.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's
And
when
it
we
took,
went from focusing on trade figures to focusing on money supply.
yeah. And
That's
it took 10 years from Reagan to be elected to when we actually saw the worst of the inflation. It took 9 years, 1979. Reagan was elected, what,
in 80,
80,
80 to
right?
84, 80 to 88.
Right, and that's when
And
we
then
got a
Bush.
handle on it.
Yeah.
So under Nixon and Ford, Nixon had price controls. Wage, you know what the inflation rate was when Nixon imposed wage and price controls?
No, that was too much. That was before me.
What do you think it was? What do you think it could have been for
6%,
something that
8%,
drastic to happen?
8%,
3.2%.
3.2%.
3.2% was enough, enough to formulate wage and price controls and impose that on a free market economy.
Jerry Ford had the whip inflation now button,
That's
the
right, the
win
win
button.
buttons, the win
That's right.
buttons. That's right. It's ridiculous. It sounds so ridiculous, and it was. It was just so pointless,
Whip
you know.
inflation now.
So that would have been Ford came in around 76, I guess, and Carter left in 80.
Carter came in at 76,
Yeah,
so I
Ford was
think
there in
Ford was the last
74. Nixon
74. Yeah,
resigned in 74. So
right.
Ford was there from 74. So from 76 to 79, 80, we saw the worst of inflation. And it wasn't until 80 where Volcker said to Reagan, well, if you want me to do what I got to do, you're going to get a lot of flack. And Reagan said, I'll take the heat. You do it. And he really did it. And I think we're right there now. We're saying, the federal debt has reached $36 trillion. And Bissett is saying to Trump, I'll tell you what it's going to take. It's going to take firing a third of the people or half the people in the public sector and growing jobs in the private sector. Trump is saying, all right, I'll do it. And he's
Right.
done. He's got 2 years to do it. He doesn't have
And
4 years.
and I looked at that quote and I had to read it 2 or 3 times. And if he says he's been thinking about it for 18 months, so when Vivek and Doe and Elon started talking about, I remember the interview with with Vivek saying, "Yeah, we cut half the workforce." And Lex Friedman said, "How do you do that?" It's very simple. He says, "If your social security number ends in an odd number, you're out." Right, right.
That's
It's
right.
like, it's very easy. He said,
The
"We're going to
Vivek
get rid of a lot of
solution.
people."
Yeah. It's like, no, I'd need even license plates. Your license plate is even? Goodbye. You know.
That's exactly, yeah. So I mean that was easily 6 months ago, right? It's 3 months before the election, maybe more. It was probably 9 months ago. So for 9 months, Bessent was in Trump's ear saying, "I think this is what we got to do. I think this is where we got to go," and that was the plan. Like, all right,
Yeah.
so
But
we'll
there's
work
a
on it.
J curve on that plan, which is the problem. I mean, the jobs go out the window right away. The consumer pulls back because the layoffs hit everybody. Real estate suffers because people start to scale down. I'm getting out of my 6 bedroom house and into a condo. And we start to see reverberations all over the economy. And until all the new money comes in and starts to hire people, I mean, how long does it take to hire somebody? You go through rounds of interviews, you get people on board, then they get in, and it's going to take a couple of weeks to look around and find out where the men's room is. And by that time, it's a few months before they start to get effective and you start to see the results. So we're 6 months to 9 months away from the private sector starting to replace some of these jobs.
This was my fear back in October, November, when we were talking about, I remember we had Maddie on, we had Steve Flanagan on talking about the dollar bullish. We're going to see a lot of influx because I said, yeah, but we're going to have some really bad numbers in the interim. Times are not going to be good. We're going to go through some really
Yeah,
tough times.
we're there now.
And
We're there now.
it's happened a lot quicker than I thought because I didn't think Trump was going to be as aggressive as he's been. The move has happened a lot quicker than I thought. I thought there was going to be a little bit more of a holiday period, and then we were going to suffer through it. But he's getting all the bad news out of the way now.
Yeah, well, the dollar technically is rolled over.
Yeah.
And I would say that the reasons for that are, number one, the bond market has improved. We had massive rally in bonds. 10-year goes from 479 to 420 in a couple of weeks, in a few weeks, like 3 weeks. That's a career ender.
And I was reading people talking about this could be at 3% in another year.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so your yields are lower for dollar assets, dollar fixed income assets. So that's very depressing for the dollar. The outlook, the consumer is clearly running out of gas, and the jobs picture is deteriorating by the minute because of the action shrinking the public sector, taking that public sector credit card away. And it looks like peace may break out in Europe.
And just getting back to the dollar quickly, I just looked at a quick chart. Range for the year in the euro, 112, 102 roughly. Right, so we've had 10 big figure swing from highs to lows, and now we're bouncing off the lows. What we used to look at when I used to trade was Fibonacci retracement points. The Fibonacci 1/3, 382% back, the 50% retracement, the 618 retracement. So on a 10 big figure move, a 618 retracement is 6.2 euros, right? 6.2 big numbers. So we've gone from 102 to 108 now. So we're at the 2/3 retracement. If it doesn't stop here, we're going to go back to 112 and beyond.
Yeah.
So I think technically this is a crucial point we're at for the dollar right now.
And the third piece of the fundamental, that's the technical side, but the third piece of the fundamental, including interest rates and where the economy's going, is if peace breaks out in Europe, that's bullish for the euro. You're going to like the euro. So there's the euro piece of it as well as the dollar piece of it.
I'm certainly rooting for it, but I'm not convinced yet because I don't think the public is convinced yet in Europe. I think they're still very angry at the Trump-Zelensky meeting. I think they still fear the Russian bear. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope cooler heads prevail, and we do find a way around this, and peace does break out. But right now, I think there's a lot of angry people, and it's inflated egos that are pushing people to stand up.
Well, I hear that, and in my experience, the Europeans make a lot of noise, and when you ask them to write a check, that hand stays in the pocket for way too long, and now we'll see if they're prepared. What they are resigned to do. I think. Let's look at a halfway solution. A halfway solution to them is going to be they begrudgingly raise their defense budgets past the NATO targets. Not only get to the 2%, but beyond 2% of GDP. Right. So their own defense budgets and their own armies start to go up. And that's big enough pain. But as long as they know the U.S. is there on their side and with some kind of a commercial presence in the Ukraine, in the field itself, not boots on the ground. They'll take that to going it alone without the U.S. I mean, the talk is, I'm going it alone, but money talks and bullshit walks. And to me, I think that's bullshit. They'll make that noise for a while, but I don't see them following through on it.
I just saw on the BBC that there's going to be peace talks between the U.S. and Ukraine. So negotiations in Saudi Arabia next week. So we're a few days away from kicking that off, and maybe that's the beginning of it. Maybe Trump comes back in. Be interesting to see who he sends out for those peace talks, whether it's Bissett, whether it's Rubio, or whether it's Vance himself.
It depends on what neighborhood window you're looking out of. The Europeans got one window and one perspective on this. But Trump's perspective is, if I can pull Russia out of the arms of China, because they don't want to be there anyway. They're natural enemies anyway. And Putin doesn't want to be in a subservient position to China, which he is now. China's his big brother. He would rather stand alone. Michael Rosenberg, a friend of mine, made an interesting point today. He said we could be on the verge of another Yalta conference, where you could see Xi and Putin and Trump and somebody from Europe, I don't know who.
Grown, Starmer. Yeah.
Yeah, probably two or three of them sit there and take a map and divide up the world. You know, we may be there. That may be a logical outcome to what's happening.
Yeah. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope cooler heads prevail because I keep asking the question, how does the war end? Everybody that wants to go at it, how does it end?
Yeah.
What makes it stop? And Russia's not going to back down. So
Well, they
somebody's
don't. The problem with that logic is they don't have the manpower. They have to change their tactics. Strategically, I agree with you, but tactically, they don't have another 600,000 bodies to throw into this thing, just like Ukraine doesn't. So what does that mean? It means they got a bigger bombs. You know, they start
drone
using the
warfare.
equivalent of
Yeah.
bunker busters and maybe tactical nukes. And if you're at that point now, you're starting to use that can't last forever. A couple of those go off, and the war has to end.
And once, if the UK does put troops on the ground and planes in the air and an accident happens and somebody gets taken out, now is the US obligated through NATO to defend the UK?
Only if the UK is attacked, which they won't be, and only if NATO is attacked. But if Zelensky gets his way, and Ukraine is part of NATO, then yes,
Okay.
that's
So the UK coming in as a force on its own, it's
no,
not an attack.
not an attack on the UK.
Okay. All right. That's interesting to see.
At least
Um,
that's the way I read it, and
yeah.
that's how Trump will read it too. Trump is
Yeah.
going to say, you want to fight it out, go fight it out. Leave me out of it." That's why he's adamant about no Ukraine membership in NATO.
Hmm.
That's a non-starter for Putin.
Yeah. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to defend the Baltics. He doesn't want to defend Ukraine. He wants to stay out of it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Europeans believe that he's going to march through Europe. Maybe if he rolled over Ukraine in 3 or 4 weeks, like he thought he was, yeah. But sitting there for 3 years and looking
Right.
at it, I think he's thinking twice. Oh my God, what if I have to go through Poland? What if I have to go
Right.
through,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
can't see getting in the middle of this with Poland or any of the other European nations. He's not resurrecting the Soviet Union. He may take a slice out, which is what he's trying to do with the Donbass region.
Yeah.
Understandable,
Well, that gives him a warm water port, and it
right?
gives him a place, and he's already conquered it, so he's got it. Possession is 9/10 of the law, right?
Unfortunately, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the markets, staying on the markets here, the dollar technically has rolled over. There's a lot of reasons to sell the dollar, not a hell of a lot of reasons to buy it, unless you think the capital inflows are going to continue. I mean, they had $2 trillion came in last week. Those are big
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah. Apple and Taiwan Semiconductor, and we did have a comment from someone about Taiwan Semiconductor. Says there's no way that's going to happen anytime soon because the U.S., we don't have the qualified engineers to do what they need to do. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and I think it's going to, with a little education, a little time to look it through. I think we'll get the qualified engineers to
I
make
think
that
with the
happen.
gold card, we'll get the qualified engineer.
Yeah, yeah. He did touch
Somebody,
on it in his speech the other day too.
yeah, somebody decides that they're going to invest $100 million. You know, $30 million to bring in six qualified engineers. It's not a big number at 5 million a card.
Right. Yeah. I wish you would have spoke more about the strategic wealth fund. I wanted to know more about the crypto reserves that he was talking about because that's a wild card, and a lot of
I don't
detractors are
see
saying,
I don't see any benefit to that at all, other than he's hedging against a run on the dollar losing its reserve status.
but is it going to be some of these second, third tier cryptocurrencies that's going to take its place?
The
Why
bulk of
not?
it would be Bitcoin, I guess, right?
Yeah, but from what I read, it seemed like he's going to have a host of different cryptocurrencies. I don't know. It's
I don't know. We got a strategic oil reserve that's depleted. He's got to fill that up.
right.
And now the oil is flirting with $65, $67 a barrel. I guess that could become a reality here and put a bottom on the falling knife that crude oil seems to be.
We did mention last week that it was a good opportunity. Everybody was looking at the U.S. defense stocks with the possible cuts in U.S. defense budget due to Doge, that they were depressed. And since all of this has gone on, we've seen U.S. defense stocks take another big rally up. Yesterday, General Dynamics, Huntington Ingalls, big rallies.
Yeah, the boat builders.
Yeah,
Huntington is a boat builder, and that
yeah,
that got some play this week.
yeah. I haven't looked at RTX. I know you follow that one. Has that been?
It had a run up, a spike. It dropped off today a bit, but I think in terms of the dome, that's a place to look.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I said it last week. I still think it's true somewhat. I think we could have another 10, 15% down in the Dow without really having much problem. I think there's too many people that bought in with both hands early on with the Trump presidency, and things are lining up the wrong way. As you said, economically, the numbers, the job picture.
What I said to my guys today was, if you're prepared to look past the trough that's coming up, and you're a long-term investor, uh, you might want to nibble on the way down and establish your position as we go forward. But don't look to benefit from it for the next 6 months.
At
And
least.
maybe you will, but you ought to be taking a 1 year time horizon. My view of this whole thing, timing wise, is that he's moving as quick as he is so that all is tidy by the next midterm election.
Yeah, he
So,
wants to get all the bad news out of the way
yeah.
by the end of the second quarter. Yeah, that's all going to be done, and hopefully we start to build and grow by the end of the year. So I think it's you're saying 6 months. I think 9 months to a year we'll be back on strong footing. Where does that leave gold for now? Gold, does you see it breaking 3,000?
I think gold goes the other way.
Yeah,
I'm not so much negative on gold as I'm not excited about it at all. If you look at the drivers of gold, do you feel like we're facing inflation? They were talking about tariffs being inflationary.
no, but
Yeah, early days, but not later. They're depressionary.
yeah,
They,
but we're talking about the dollar getting sold off, and I think gold's going to benefit in that view. If
why
if they're
why does gold benefit when the dollar sells off? It
well,
does as a general rule, but why?
I think it's a safety point. If you don't trust being in Europe, and I don't think a lot of the European leaders have given you a lot of reason to trust that they're going to have sound economic policies there, and you think that the U.S. is in trouble. I don't know. I think gold. I think we're going to
Okay,
break
so
three
you're
thousand.
let me capsulize your argument. You're saying that the dollar is in danger of losing its safe haven status?
I think the dollar, for all the reasons we just pointed out over the last 20 minutes, the dollar is going to have a tough road over the next 6 months.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that gold is a beneficiary. That's my point.
Well, where else? Where do you go? Do you buy the euro? Do you buy the yen? Do you buy the pound?
We just made a
Uh,
pretty strong argument for Europe and European assets.
uh, I think it'll rally, but I think gold is going to get some of that benefit as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm not really bullish on gold at this point.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not bearish,
yeah.
but I think you could follow the technicals and maybe look for a place to nibble in. Um, I, I just don't see it.
I think
Maybe
people try to
crypto will
sell
get that
gold.
play.
I think there's been a lot of profit taking. People have tried to sell gold. There's been an underlying buyer. Every time it comes down, it pops back up.
Well,
You know.
central banks are big buyers.
Yeah.
You
Maybe
did,
that continues.
yeah. If
I
it
don't know,
does,
but
then
looking
maybe
at just
I could see a bid underneath for gold, but a driving rally, and maybe I'm just missing it. I don't see it. I think gold has had its move for now. We'll get another one
yeah,
later.
we
But
had a 40% move over the last 12
yeah,
months,
yeah.
14 months or something like that. Yeah. I don't disagree. I'm not throwing in the towel on the long
No,
position.
no. Just think there's going to be
Yeah.
better opportunities than gold. When
What do you
things,
think about the tariffs, Canada and Mexico? I saw that he's delaying Mexico another month, but Canada seems to be kicking its heels in.
yeah, and they will. They will. Um, here's the thing about tariffs. When you're talking about a country that's a one horse town, Canada's not that. But if you're talking about some of those countries that have one industry or the bulk of their economies is built around one, and you're asking them to give up that horse, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
They face,
And we're seeing Mexico cave for just that reason, I think. You
yeah.
know, Mexico needs
But
the US much more than US needs Mexico.
what Trump is doing is saying, okay, we'll leave that horse alone, but let's look at something else, some other way you can make me happy. Scratch my back some other way. And that's where he's going with this. You know, the guys, I used to fire mortars when I was in the Army, and you didn't see where the mortar landed. You dropped around in the barrel, took off, and then you waited for the guy on the radio to say, okay, deflection, move it 5 millimeters to your left. And he's telling you where the round landed. And that's Trump. Trump shoots a round off and says, I'm going to go equal tariffs. You tariff me 10%, I'll tariff you 10%. The round lands. They say, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And then he redirects fire all over again. And that's his strategy. And that's the way you move big organizations. That's how change occurs.
Right, but I see that happening in Mexico. I don't necessarily see that happening with the opposition in Canada.
You're
I think
right.
yeah,
You're right. I don't disagree. Canada's
that,
another story.
yeah,
But he'll find out there's a lot of. Remember what Vivek said in that interview? When we got one issue, when we're dealing with one issue, that we can't resolve it. But we got a lot of moving parts, we can resolve it. And there's a ton of moving parts with Canada. You got our booze sales to them, you got their dairy products to us, you got cars. There's just so many different places where you could tweak this and add that. So he'll come to a deal with Canada.
I hope so. I'm just fearful that egos are going to get in the middle of it on both sides. We're seeing Doug Ford. I'm going to cut electricity. I want to make the red states feel pain coming back. So there's a lot of that machismo
Oh, I
happening.
didn't say it was going to be pretty. No, there's going to be blood.
Yeah, and what does that do to the Canada dollar?
Well, it depends on your time frame, and that's where I was going before. You got to, if you're looking at this market, we can't really say this is good and this is bad. This is good short term and bad long term, and vice versa. So you got to wait for the smoke to clear to see really where we're going right now. There's too much smoke in the place. So you hide out in bonds, you stay safe until the smoke clears.
Yeah, uh, bonds and dividend producing stocks, I guess. But I
Well,
think that makes
stocks
sense.
are rotating, going from growth to value. So you see the rotation within equities, and you're going to continue to see that. Financials are the banks, the international bank stocks, the stocks abroad are rallying. So these are wild times, wild time. There's
Really,
bullets
yeah,
flying in every direction.
yeah. It really is to think it's 5 6 weeks in office, and we're talking about so many things that, weren't on anyone's radar. No one was talking about a sovereign wealth fund, you know, and that was yesterday's major news, and now
Yeah, right.
it's on
You're
front and
right.
back pages.
I haven't heard that word, sovereign wealth. Nobody's talking about that.
Right.
What's going in that fund?
The gold card, that is the gold green card, that came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, that really did.
This, and now Zelensky is taken up, and then we still got all the political ramifications of the FBI and Epstein's files and all the things that are going on with that. A lot of crazy stuff happening throughout. The political landscape is wacky and
But
wild.
meanwhile, he shut the border down completely,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And he did it in 40 days.
I remember, I guess it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, probably. We were in Washington D.C. for Police Week, and if you've ever been, it's an amazing time because there's cops from every little city, locality, all over. You see
And you
people.
can't find a donut anywhere.
That's right. And I saw some border patrol guys staying at the hotel we were staying at, and quietly walked up and I said, "How you guys doing? Is it as bad as we hear?" And the guy turned around, he wouldn't talk to me, walked away. And Allison said to his partner, "Listen, we're just regular people. We don't have any microphones. There's no video. We're just asking a question." And the other guy came back. He says, "It's worse. It's worse than what you hear." And I said, "You getting any support?" He said, "Locally, yeah." He says, "Everybody that's with us on the border, a lot of support." He says, "But up above, no, throwing us to the wolves." It's like, oh, okay. So that was 3 years ago, and it progressively got worse, I imagine, until such time as Trump came in and shut it down.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Homan dragging the mayor of Boston out of her house by her hair. I mean, he's got her. He just wants at her, you know?
Did you see yesterday they had Adams, they had Michelle Wu from Boston, the guy from Chicago, all
Yeah.
speaking. And what I saw was a stat of how much each of those cities have given to illegal undocumented aliens. Chicago was something like, I don't know, $560 million. New York, I think it was 6.2 billion. And Boston, I don't know, we
She
never
wouldn't
ask.
answer.
We don't
She said,
ask.
she said, I don't know. And the guy from Florida said, you don't know? How could you not know? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, what I read was she said, we never ask. We never ask. But that's going away, right? That's going away.
For the most part. For the
Yeah,
most part.
yeah. All right. Well, it was good chat. Enjoy your evening. Once again, everyone, subscribe, hit your like buttons, send your comments back and forth. We do appreciate it. We do write back. We do let you know what we're thinking.
To all those
So,
people that are still listening, both of you, I would say ring the bell and subscribe and help us out. Good to talk to you, Fred.
all right. Thanks, Tim.